Determine the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of the equation y equals negative 2/3 x plus 2. Then use the slope and y-intercept to graph the equation by hand. So let's see what this equation tells us. So we see that this equation has y by itself on one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, we see that we have an x term and a constant term. So this is telling us that this equation is written in this form y equals mx plus b. That's a standard equation form that we're going to see a lot that's called the slope-intercept form. This is the slope-intercept form of a linear equation. And we can count on that whenever we see that y all by itself, and then on the other side we see the constant and the x term of a linear equation. So from that equation, we're going to be able to tell the slope, and we're going to be able to tell specifically the y-intercept. That's why it's called the slope-intercept form. We do have to be a little bit careful. We have to remember that this is always going to give us the y-intercept, not the x-intercept. It doesn't specify that in the name of this type of equation. So when we see slope-intercept, we just want to be sure that we remember that that's the y-intercept. So let's write the equation that we are given down underneath this general form. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 2. And now we can line up the information that we're given here. We see that m corresponds to negative 2/3, and we can see that b corresponds to positive 2. Now, if we understand what the m and the b represent, now we're in business. Well, as you remember, m is always going to represent the slope. That's always going to give us the slope of the line. And if I'm given in this form, the ordered pair 0, b will always be the y-intercept of the line. And so to graph this, we're going to start with the y-intercept. That's going to be our starting point. So for us, for the problem we have here, our y-intercept is 0, and the 2 is positive, so it's going to be 0, 2. So we're going to start here, and we're going to plot this point. So plot 0, 2, just right here. And now we want to use our slope of negative 2/3. So remember that slope, that's the idea of the rise over the run. And because we have a negative, we want to be sure that that negative sign goes only in the numerator or in the denominator, but not both. So we can write it as negative 2 over positive 3. We would also get the same line if we did positive 2 over negative 3. Those are equivalent. Both of those would give us negative 2/3 for our slope. So from our y-intercept, from this point 0, 2, if we rise negative 2, let's use this one here first. If we rise negative 2, that means we go down 2 and then run positive 3 so that it has us moving to the right. 1, 2, 3. That's going to be that point right there. We could also have used this form of the slope here, positive 2. Let me just put a little plus there. Positive 2 over negative 3. From the y-intercept, again, always starting from the y-intercept, not from the origin, we go, this time we're going to rise 2, and we're going to run negative 3. 1, 2, 3. And there's another point. And notice how all three of those points are all on the same line with each other. We can do it either way. Now we're going to go ahead and get our straight edge to create our line. So let's bring the straight edge down and get it lined up. Be sure to line up as carefully as you can. So we're going to move it over here and line it up right there with that first point. And then I'm going to pivot it down and line it up with those other points. It looks pretty good. And now we're going to draw our line. So our line is going to go like that. Now we can get rid of our straight edge. Delete that. And finally, we're going to put arrows on each side of our line. Now, if we wanted to do a quick double check, remember that we could take any point on this line and it should satisfy this equation. So let's say that we chose this point right here. What is that point? Well, let's see. We've gone 3 in the x direction and we've gone 0 in the y direction. So that point right there is actually our x-intercept. Let's see what happens if we put 3 in for x and 0 in for y into the original equation up here. We said we're going to let y equal 0. That's down here. 0 equals negative 2/3. My x value we said was 3 plus 2. And this is just a little check just to make sure that I do in fact have the right line. So negative 2/3 times 3, well, that's like 3 over 1, and those 3's are going to cancel each other out. 0 equals negative 2, whoops, negative 2 plus 2. And sure enough, negative 2 plus 2 is 0. That point satisfies the equation, and so I can feel pretty confident that I've got the right line for the graph of this equation.